with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus told his disciples this parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out at dawn to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with them for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. Going out about 9 o'clock, the landowner saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, "You too go into my vineyard, and I will give you what is just." So they went off. And he went out again around noon and around 3 o'clock and did likewise. Going out about 5 o'clock, the landowner found others standing around and said to them, "Why do you stand here idle all day?" They answered, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You too go into my vineyard." When it was evening, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Summon the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and ending with the first." When those who had started about 5 o'clock came, each received the usual daily wage. So when the first came, they thought they would receive more. But each of them also got the usual wage. And on receiving it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, "These last ones worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who bore the day's burden and the heat." He said to one of them in reply, "My friend, I am not cheating you. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what is yours and go. What if I wish to give this last one the same as you? Or am I not free to do as I wish with my own money? Are you envious because I am generous?" Thus the last will be first, and the first will be last. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I heard a man tell a story recently, remembering when he was in 3rd grade, he had a teacher named Mrs. Stevens. And on the very first day of school, Mrs. Stevens told all the children to line up to go out for recess. And so there was a mad scramble of all the children to get into the front of the line. And as soon as all the children lined up, Mrs. Stevens went to the back of the line and said, "This is where the line begins." And she brought all the children out to the playground. The man said, "I still remember the surprised look on the girl's face who was in the back of the line, who suddenly found herself in the front. And I remember the annoyance of the children who were in the front of the line, who suddenly found themselves in the back." Well, the next day, again, Mrs. Stevens told all the children to line up for recess, and now there was a mad scramble to get to the back of the line. But as soon as all the children lined up, Mrs. Stevens went to the middle of the line, and she said, "This is where the line begins today." Well, the children quickly got the message, and after a while, the mad scrambling to always be first stopped. In life, we so often love to scramble to be first. We try to get ahead, get that raise, get that promotion, get that recognition. We begin to think that life is all about my efforts, my success, what I accomplish. We grow envious when someone else gets something that I want. But Jesus, in the parable today of the workers in the vineyard, teaches us a different way to live our lives. He teaches us to see our lives, everything in our life, as a gift, a grace given to us by God that's totally undeserved. It's simply God's generous giving towards us. I think this parable has a way of annoying us more than almost any other parable in the Gospels, perhaps especially as Americans, because it violates our sense of fairness. It violates that deeply held belief that we have, that if you work hard and you get ahead, you'll get what's coming to you. You'll get what you deserve. We are shocked to learn that the owner of this vineyard gives all his workers the same pay. It doesn't matter if they worked all day long in the heat, or they just show up in the last hour and barely break a sweat. They all get the usual daily wage. And we say that's so unfair. But the problem is not that the owner of the vineyard is being unfair. He's not being unfair at all. He's giving everyone a fair, just wage. He is being even generous. The problem, if you read the parable closely, is that those workers who show up at the beginning of the day, their problem seems to be that they settle for too little. Before they go out to the vineyard, they settle and they agree with the owner for the usual daily wage. I don't know if you've ever been in a job interview and everything's going great, you're getting to know these people and they seem to like you, you have the necessary skills, you think they're going to offer you the job, and then all of a sudden they ask you this question: what are your salary expectations? How much money do you want to make in this job? And how are you supposed to answer that question? I mean, do you ask for a small amount in the hopes that maybe they'll give you the job and give you a raise later? Or do you ask for a high amount and maybe they'll actually give it to you, or at least you can negotiate from there? If you don't know your value as an employee, it's very difficult to answer that question. And that's the problem with these workers. They don't seem to know their value. They don't seem to realize that the owner of this particular vineyard values his workers highly. He seems to be a man of boundless generosity. So much so that if they had asked for 10 times the usual daily wage, he probably would have given it to them. And that's our problem so often when it comes to God. We settle for too little. We don't recognize our value when it comes to God. We don't realize that God values us infinitely. And he wants to give us everything he has. He wants to give us his life, his grace, his love poured out into our hearts. He wants to give us everything he has, and we settle for too little. We say, well, God, just give me what I deserve. Give me what's coming to me. Give me what I've earned by my good deeds. But to ask God for what you deserve is not a very good prayer, because what we deserve is, sort of like hell. In our sins, we've deserved hell over and over again. So don't ask God for what you deserve. Ask God for what he wants to give you in his generosity, in his mercy, in his love. Ask God for everything. He's ready to give it. Everything is a gift. Everything is a grace. Everything is a totally undeserved act of God's generosity. That's why when we receive something that's good, we are filled with gratitude. And when we don't receive something we want or something is taken away, we say, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. When I came to this parish 5.5 years ago, I didn't know how long the Lord was asking me to work in this particular vineyard. I just knew that he was sending me. I didn't know how much I would be expected to work or how difficult the work would be or what the rewards would be. Early on when I got sick, I didn't think I was going to be here all that long, and then after that, everything kind of became a bonus. Everything became a gift. I just knew I was being sent. Bishop Labashi said, Gate of Heaven Parish needs a priest, and so I went. I had to look on a map and find out where Lancaster and Whitefield were, but when I figured it out, I came. And I certainly had hopes and expectations coming here, as I'm sure all of you did as well. And we could have settled for those expectations. We could have said, God, give us what we want. And God is good. He would have given it to us. But I think we dared to make another request. We said, God, give us what you want us to receive. Give us everything. Give us your Holy Spirit. And I think I can say that God has answered that prayer with more generosity than I ever thought possible. And that's why I'm trying to begin my work as vocations director this week with that same type of prayer. And I hope that you pray with me. God, give us the men for the priesthood in the Diocese of Manchester that you want to give. Send out laborers for your harvest. Do not give us what we deserve in our lack of faith. Give us what you want to give us in your generosity. Everything is a gift. That's what helps St. Paul today to resolve this incredible conflict that he's in. He's writing to the Philippians, the people in Philippi that he has spent many years with, teaching them about God and helping them, and he loves those people. But he's writing to them from prison because he's about to go off to Rome where he's going to be executed. He's going to be killed for the faith. And he says, I feel stuck here. I feel trapped kind of between two choices because on the one hand, I want to be with all of you. I love you. And I know for your benefit it would be good if I stayed. But on the other hand, I know that Christ is calling me to go to Rome and perhaps to give my life for him. And I want that too. It's even better to be with Christ. And I don't know which of the two is better. I don't even know which I'll choose. But finally, what helps him to resolve this conflict is that he remembers that everything is a gift. So it doesn't really matter how long you stay in a particular vineyard because it's all just Christ's gift to us. In the end, he finally comes to some peace and he says, Christ is magnified by life or by death. For to me, to live is Christ, and death is gain. This weekend in Oklahoma, there's a priest being beatified, making the last step towards being a saint in the church. His name is Father Stanley Rother. He's the first person born in the United States to officially be declared a martyr. And Father Stanley was a priest from Oklahoma. He actually almost didn't become a priest. He failed out of seminary because he couldn't learn Latin, which you had to learn as a priest in that time. And he failed out of one seminary, but fortunately he had a bishop and presumably a vocations director that believed in him. And so they found another seminary that would take him in. Finally, he was ordained a priest in 1963. And he worked for many years in Oklahoma as a priest. But then he felt called by God to become a missionary. And he went to his bishop and he asked permission to go to Guatemala, one of the poorest nations on earth, to do mission work there. And the bishop let him go. And for many years, Father Stanley lived among the poor in Guatemala. And he helped them to build up their lives, and he advocated for justice for them in a country that was very corrupt. And he, by a miracle of God's grace, this man who couldn't even learn Latin, learned Spanish fluently. He learned several native languages of Guatemala. He even translated the whole New Testament into some obscure Guatemalan language so the people could read the Bible for the very first time. And he was beloved among the people. He stayed there for many years, but in the 1970s and 80s, civil war broke out in Guatemala. And there was all these rival factions trying to control the country, and there were death squads going around with hit lists, executing certain leaders among the people, especially among the poor. And Father Stanley's name ended up on one of these hit lists, and his life was in grave danger. And so the bishop in Oklahoma called him back to Oklahoma. And Father Stanley went. For a diocesan priest, the will of God is always expressed through obedience to the bishop. But back in Oklahoma, he was there for a few years, and he became increasingly doubtful about what he should do. And like St. Paul, he kind of felt stuck between two options, because he said, on one hand, I love my people here in Oklahoma, and I want to be with them. But on the other hand, I love my people back in Guatemala, and I want to be with them too, and I know how much they're suffering. Finally, he said, the people need a priest, he said. And he went to his bishop and he begged permission to go back to Guatemala. And the bishop did not want to let him do it because he knew how dangerous it was. But finally, Father Stanley prevailed on him and he let him go. And Father Stanley went back to Guatemala in Easter of 1981. And a few months later, he was shot and killed in his rectory by a Guatemalan death squad. For to him, life was Christ and death was gain. Today, I find myself in a similar position to St. Paul or to Blessed Stanley, that I feel stuck between these two choices. I don't know which is better, because on one hand, I know that God is calling me to this work as vocations director. It's good, important work, and it's probably something we should have done as a diocese for a long time. We haven't had a full-time vocations director for as long as I know, and we need it because we're quickly running into a situation in our diocese where we're not going to have enough priests to send to every parish. We're trying to fill in with foreign priests and priests who are from religious orders, but we also need to promote vocations among our own native people. And so this is very important work, but at the same time, of course, I'm sad to be leaving all of you. And I can say that these last 5 years have been the happiest years of my life. I have grown so much as a priest, as a man of God, and I will always be grateful for this, and grateful to all of you. And that's why I'm happy I'm not leaving right away. And also my work as vocations director will bring me back here to the North Country and to this parish many times in the future. So it's not goodbye, but it is a change. And change is always hard. And that's why I'm very happy that the bishop knows what Father Stanley knew, that the people need a priest. And to his great credit, he's getting a lot of pressure to do this right away, but he said, but the people of Gate of Heaven Parish need a priest. And I don't have a priest to send them right now, so I can't take Father Matt out of the parish until we have someone that we can send. And he feels that sometime in this next year, he will have someone that he can send that can lead our parish into the future, who can teach us different things and more things than I could because we're all different. We all have different gifts and experiences. And we all have our time in the vineyard. But in the end, it all belongs to Christ. So don't be afraid. Think of the value that we have in God's eyes. And don't be afraid to ask the good shepherd who never abandons his sheep for a good shepherd, a good pastor here at Gate of Heaven who will lead us into the future. Don't be afraid to ask. And I'll be working very, very hard over the next few years to make sure that every parish in New Hampshire has a good shepherd. Because the people need a priest. A priest who loves them is just about the best gift that God can ever give his people. Just like a people who loves him is just about the best gift that God can give a priest. It's far more than we deserve.